You use aliens in order to write.
Yeah, you could say that. We are starting, and Musicline is starting the foundation for the love of musical theatre, and it's growing rapidly, and you'll see it on social media. Musical theatre is huge.
Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Amy. You might remember me from the last podcast that we did. I'm here and today we are doing our third podcast and we are talking to Ben O'Hare.
Hello.
Audience applause. There's no audience, it's just us in the room today. So welcome Ben to the podcast today. What these podcasts are for anyone who's watching for the first time, is we're trying to build up you getting to know the writers basically. I think first of all, can you give us a little bit of information on your background, what you've been doing up until this point? So mainly your childhood, if you want to start there.
So I've always been in the arts, started when I was 5 years old. So I went to stage school from the age 5 up to 17. And within that time frame, I was always on stage. I remember being about 8 years old, I was in a Russian opera in Birmingham. And then as children, we were chosen to be babes in pantomime at the Birmingham Hippodrome. And then from there, we had the opportunity to audition for actual roles within the pantomime. And actually had the opportunity to audition for Michael Darling in Peter Pan. And there were celebrities, obviously, in Panto at the time, which was for Kudos. So I got to work with Joe Pasquale, Brian Connolly, Mina Anwar, to name a few. So growing up, I was always surrounded by, actors, musical theatre actors, screen actors. So that was my life. And within stage school, we did loads of performances. It was, dancing in Disneyland Paris, in the parade, Her Majesty's Theatre in London. I think doing that and staying in the arts and that industry is always, as it was the foundation, so I've always stayed in that. So from that background, I started writing when I was about 11 years old. I started writing my own comics and designing them, illustrating them. Again, it's creative, so it wasn't like I was doing anything different. It was something that I was already doing, so I started writing comics and stories, writing songs, and then I just kept doing it. So you can imagine from the age of 11, and I'm 32 now, that I just kept doing that until, an opportunity arose.
And you touched on Panto that you took part in. Is Panto something that's in your blood, would you say?
Very much so. My first pantomime, I think I was about 11 years old. Okay. So from an 11-year-old starting with Panto, that's when you start to really understand things. You're going through feelings, growing. It's pre-teen, so you're a pre-teen, started to understand what you like and what you don't like. And when you do something that you do like, that's it then. I think you're going to like it for life. And from that moment, I've always been interested in the idea of, the audience interaction, the comedy side, the singing, the dancing, the acting, everything. And so I've continued to do Panto or even write Panto even to this day.
You mentioned the actors that were in pantomime at the time, and obviously you must have, in all of those years of doing pantomime, you must have met so many. Do you think that they also inspired you? Because I know that, and we'll touch on it in a moment, that you're also an actor.
Yep.
So did they inspire you? Was there anyone in particular that inspired you during that time?
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Mina Anwar, who's famous for Thin Blue Line. She worked with Rowan Atkinson, and when I was about 13 or 14, she said, you don't need drama school, you don't need to do all that, you just need to be able to act. And I always looked up to that and thought, well, maybe I can try that.
I know that you have done a bit of acting and you did some voice acting. Your voice can be heard on the Musicline Nativities, little plug there, yes. Get them in for Christmas. And also you've worked on other writers' works with your voice acting. What's your acting sort of background since growing up? What have you been doing?
So obviously I was on stage a lot, so it was always stage acting and musical theatre. And then when I was 14 years old, I had the opportunity to audition for a feature film, which obviously screen acting is completely different. I was always trained in theatre stage and musical / panto. So screen acting was completely different. So I went for the audition, out of 8,000 children, and went for the role of King of the Moon in a film called Journey to the Moon, and I landed the role of the King of the Moon. Thank you. Getting that from 8,000 children to get that role felt incredible, especially when I wasn't a screen actor. So then it was filmed in Shepperton Studios when I was 14. It was my birthday on set. So it was my 15th birthday on set. They got me a cake and everything, which was great. But yeah, so I got the opportunity to be in London at 15 years old, and it was filming next to some big movies at the time. I think there was the Jason Bourne in Bourne Ultimatum was filming at one of the blocks next to us. Golden Compass was filming another side. So obviously that was going back a few years now. That's 2007 or 8. So yeah, having those opportunities at a young age, made me think, well, I can continue to do that. So don't quit acting. I've done it at a young age. Keep on going. So I studied it in college and continued to just do short films, performances, and still do musicals because that is my bread and butter.
Your job title, if we was going to talk about Ben O'Hare and if we were going to list what you do underneath, it would be writer, actor, director, theatre school owner.
Yeah.
There'd be lots and lots of things that you've done. So do you think that really inspired you for your directing? Did you think, wow, I would love to do what he's doing?
As I grew up more, I became more familiar with what was happening on film sets. And so when it comes to do my own short films, I knew the terminology of what to say from the director, to get the clapperboard, to write the scenes, how the boom needed to be out of shot, different things that I just picked up along the way. And then as I got older, like I say, that's when it became really interesting. And I was like, subconsciously, I know all of that information, so I can now put it into play. So when it came to actually doing and shooting the short film, I knew exactly what to do.
So obviously lots of experience as a child, lots of incredible opportunities that other children could only dream about.
Yeah.
Take us into then adulthood. What was you doing then? So with the craft that you'd learned, where did you go next?
So I'd never done a short film before. It was a feature film and it was stage performances. So I started with short films, and so I started doing student short films, and that was great because they usually build their sets within their college or university. So it was different, going to an area where the students are learning at the same time as creating art. So I started there and I thought, I could try this. Did a few more short films and loved it. And then I got an agent and I started getting more auditions for bigger productions, more feature films. And then just by accident, then I started looking at professional writing.
You run a theatre school. How did that sort of come about? How did you decide that was something that you wanted to do, and teaching, how did that come about?
When I was a bit younger, my actual work experience was theatre and education. And we went to schools. So again, I was 15 years old. I was in schools teaching children about bullying. And that work experience showed me that that I could still do that for a job, which is strange because I have actually done that. It's almost like the work experience that you do sometimes doesn't work out to be the job that you have, but in this case, it was. So I'd always worked with children, and then around 2010, 11, I volunteered as a teacher to teach children performing arts. It was just a volunteer job on the weekend, and I was writing their performances, helping direct the shows, and we writ our own performance show, and it was great. I had great feedback, so I just kept doing it. And then from there, myself and my siblings, we created a theatre company / entertainment company. So we just write our own shows. We take our students that we teach in our classes and we put them into shows, and then any other opportunities outside, externally in hotels or venues that require entertainment, we took our students or some of our adult actors and then placed them into the performances that we wrote, that I wrote. So it come hand in hand, teaching with the children, working with the children, and then creating a performance that can be used in various locations.
Is this why you believed that you could be a writer for a school musical? Do you think that was something that you thought, I know kids, I know what they want?
Absolutely. I think you need to know the humour of children. You need to know what's cool is the main thing, what's not cringy. It'd be easy to write a performance that kids would think you're trying to be cool, but you are not cool. I like to think I have an approach with my students that is not the uncool adult. I'm on their level. I understand what's trending. I use social media. I know what's happening now. So carefully I use that in my writing so that it's relatable to the children, and so it's not me thinking that I know what I'm talking about. I like to think that I do know what I'm talking about.
That's good. I think making sure that it's cool and not cringe is really important, because humour's very different now. The musical that you wrote with Steve was The Wrong Way Round. My first question, really, I've got lots of questions about the process and everything, but what was it like working with Steve? Obviously, Steve Titford, he's already well established in Musicline. He's got The Island That Rocks, Shakespeare Rocks. He's got lots and lots of different things. You might have met him on the previous podcast if you haven't seen him before. Lots and lots of experience. So what was it like working with him? Was it the first time you've ever collaborated with somebody before?
Yeah, it was the first time I've ever collaborated, and it was great because Steve knew what he was doing. Now, it's all good and well writing a musical. However, if there's a different format or there's different ways to write a musical, for example, I've never wrote a musical. They have very specific requirements on how they want their script. I didn't know that. Whereas Steve did. Steve has previous experience. So Steve was great at taking what I had done and working together to make sure it matched the formatting and the structure of a Musicline musical.
Did you get along with him?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We had to, because we met weekly, and we had a great relationship. We didn't have many disagreements on, creativity. There were disagreements on what should and shouldn't be in the script, but it was never an argument. It was more, this would be more appropriate, or I think this would work. And because of Steve's experience, I had to take that on board and, remove my, ego or anything that would think that I was right, because he knew Musicline better than I did.
And what a great opportunity for you to have somebody who knows the structure, knows what works for Musicline, but then great for him to get this fresh new set of eyes on stuff, and this new opinion and this new take on it. And obviously you are younger, sorry Steve, but he is, and you are working with kids regularly, day in, day out, so you have that absolute hands-on experience. So I think that must have been a great combination with his previous experience and knowledge, and then obviously your fresh new energy as well. I think that must be why it has worked so well. Obviously the musical is doing very, very well. It's sold so well already. You must be really, really proud of that.
I am. Yeah. I think from the very start, me and Steve said, we wanted to do well. And Steve brought the idea to Musicline, and he obviously thought, something's going to work here, because it was, it was an idea that was fresh. And when I heard about it, I jumped straight on it and said, I can't wait to do it. But what I really wanted was for the children, the junior school children, to love it. That's what I said from the beginning. And once it was completed and all the sales were done, I put out a few social media videos, and I had feedback from those junior school children saying how much fun they've had, how they've loved it, and that's what I wanted from the start. So receiving that feedback from the children to say, how much fun they were having, how much they loved it was everything for me. I loved it.
That's brilliant. I think we at Musicline, we worry so much about what the teachers think and what their perception is, and actually it's about the children and their experience and how they feel. And for people to reach out to you as the writer and say, I'm doing this, I'm playing Mr. Donner in this in the musical, and it's fantastic, it's great, that must be really, really good. If you haven't seen or heard about The Wrong Way Round musical, It's brilliant. There's a Stranger Things-esque Scooby-Doo sort of vibe about it. It's very, very fun, is what I would say. When you was writing it, was the Stranger Things thing in the back of your mind, or was there something that you had to keep remembering? It needs to almost feel like this.
There was the eeriness, so I kept imagining Hawkins, like the town of Ennerville, where The Wrong Way Round is set. And I had the eeriness feel, and like the children on the bikes and playing games, which is why I went to Steve and I said they should be playing a game like Dungeons and Dragons, but instead they play a Warhammer game, Clawhammer, which is like war games where, you know, they've got figures and they're at war with each other. I thought it'd be a good twist for them to be playing a game too and can relate that game to what's going on in the town, a bit like Stranger Things. So it was ideas and the eeriness of the town that really that held the story together in my head whilst I was writing it.
Just touching on the actual story of The Wrong Way Round. So it's very much a coming of age musical. It's very, very appropriate for those that are going into year 7, leaving junior school, going into secondary. And it has your absolute must-haves of a villain, heroes, you know, the different groups that are social groups that are within school as well. What is your favourite thing about the musical? If you could say the one thing I love about it is this, what would that be?
I like the mystery of it, you know, and the children getting to work on a case, because obviously they're investigators. They're getting to work on a case that isn't just the missing cat or, you know, someone's post's gone missing. It was the mystery. They get to work on something that's going on and then actually finding out it is actually quite a serious thing. And these are 11-year-olds. So that idea of children going through that, a bit like Scooby-Doo, was really exciting.
The other vibe I got was Goonies, and it comes back to that whole adventure thing, and the story is very much a constant adventure. People, a bit like Scooby-Doo, who you thought were really great, are revealed in the end. I won't give too much away if you haven't read it. Are revealed in the end to be the villain of the story, and it's got everything you could possibly need for, like you said, that sort of mystery musical, which is absolutely great. And everyone loves a whodunit, don't they?
Yeah.
Everybody does. Do you think your experience with writing murder mysteries, do you think that also fed into it a little bit in terms of evidence finding and things like that within the story?
I have experience writing murder mysteries for my company, my entertainment company. So because I've been doing it for a long time, when it came to write a children's mystery, it was something that I'd already done just for a different age. So having that experience absolutely had a benefit on the writing. I just had to work out how I was going to do it cleverly whilst trying to make it age appropriate, you know, and not mentioning murder, of course, but in a fun way. And sometimes I forgot that, you know, it is for children. You get way too attached to this deep storyline, and sometimes Steve would have to say, you can't go that deep, or you can't have that much information.
Is he reining you in?
Yeah, rein it back. So, you know, it was great fun, but having that experience absolutely helped with the process of writing a mystery.
I think people underestimate how difficult it is to write anything. I think people who are like, I'm going to be a writer, they don't understand the process. And I think especially Musicline musicals, they do, like you said earlier, there's a structure that is specific to Musicline. There's extensive production notes that are required. So from a writer's perspective, you haven't just got to write a story, just write a script. You've also got to think about all of the other things, because Musicline want to give the teacher, the school, everything, all the tools that are possibly available to make the process as easy as possible. And I will say, from reading the musical and working on the trailer that we did, which was incredible, the whole thing is so easy to execute, and that was another thing that I believe really came across. What is your writing process? So how do you start? What do you do? How do you get into that writing zone?
It's a very strict one. So I have a desk and a laptop and Alexa and a coaster. So I get my cup of tea, 2 sugars, and I have that on my side. And I have a writer's playlist. that I create and add to daily. And it's a mix of different soundtracks, maybe movie soundtracks or just ambient sounds. So I ask Alexa to shuffle the writing music, and then I open the laptop and I just get into the zone. And as long as that writing playlist is playing, that sort of is my muse, as they say. It enters my subconscious, and then I just create what needs to be created.
When you obviously got into the process of writing The Wrong Way Round, what was you thinking at the time? Was there any characters that you were like, this person is somebody I know? Is that how you do? Do you relate them back to experiences you've had, moments you've had in life, or people that you know? Do you bring it back to things that are actually real experiences for you?
Subconsciously, I pick up on information from films, movies, stories, and I don't know how I do it, so I couldn't explain it to you. But I feel like there's a higher consciousness that would give you information when you need to access it. So when it comes to doing a story, I will write something, look back and think, how would I have known that? And it's almost like I've seen it in a film when I was a child. For example, it's very 80s-esque, The Wrong Way Round. So when I look back, it's got that feel, but it's like, how would I know how to write that?
You wasn't even,
Exactly.
You was a toddler.
Exactly, but I watched 80s movies, like you said, The Goonies. And it's like I took that sort of feel and then added it to the script. So I don't necessarily consciously add it to my script on purpose. However, I do use people that I know their names.
Okay.
For example, Leo is named after my son. We also have Dr. James, who's named after my brother. We have Dr. Carson. Now, my family on the Spanish side are Carsini, so I took the I off and we've got Carson. And we have Ollie, who's named after my niece Olivia. So, yeah, there's just family names or friends' names added into the story, but not necessarily after those people.
The characters, they all seem to have their own personalities, and that really comes through. All of the N-Elite, which are the nerds of the story, they are the heroes of the story. Yeah. They each have their own sort of individual personalities, and that really comes across even when you're reading the script. Was that a conscious thing? Was that like, we need to make sure that we've got all of these individual personalities within the story to make it work?
So what we did was we had sort of gender neutral names, for example, Riley, River. That was our first point of contact where we go, okay, that's the start. How do we create them into characters? And then once we started writing their text onto the page, then their characters came to life. And again, as I mentioned, the muse, the higher consciousness, it just happened. I couldn't tell you the formula to create those characters. You
knew that Cameron would be funny. Yeah. He's the bit of the Joker, the class clown.
Yeah. Leo was silly. And then it would just happen. And then when I looked back at that text that I'd wrote, they were speaking off the page to me. And then I would continue that style, that humour. Because it's very easy to look at... you could type a line out, for example, and you look back and you go, that character wouldn't say like that. It's very easy to go, okay, well, I'm going to swap that line to someone else, which we did very often. It would go, well, I don't think Ollie would say that. I think River would say it.
How amazing that those characters were materialising for you as writers. You were like, no, that's incredible. And I think that speaks a lot to the writing process, that it isn't as simple as you just type up anything and anyone can say that particular line. You're really invested in who's going to be saying that in that particular moment. It's like you already had those characters in your head of what they were going to be like in terms of their personality.
Yeah, and I love the characters, so, I wanted to write more about them. But it's the same with any of my writing, If I set a story down, I want to get back to that story because I want to be with those characters and I want to be in that world. There's certain universes that I've created that I just want to be invested in. So sometimes I'll just play my writer's playlist and just go back to a story so that I'm in it.
It's that emotional investment that you have to have in a project. You have to put yourself in that place. Yeah. I'm not a writer. I could write for the sake of writing, and quite well, I imagine. But I think like you said, I think it takes a different type of person to be emotionally invested and put themselves in there to really make it work. What advice would you give to writers? So if there's anybody that is, 13, 14 and they're enjoying English at school, or they're thinking about, I want to be a writer when I'm older. I want to do that job. I want Ben O'Hare's job. Now, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to them?
Well, to be a writer, you have to write. Now, it's all good and well saying, I want to do it, but if you're not putting it into action, then you're not starting the process. So, from a young age, if they were going to do it, you need to get pen and paper, or you need to get a laptop with Word, it's as easy as Word, and just start writing. There isn't always an end goal in writing. Sometimes there are a load of writers in the world that don't actually have, a finished product, or they do have a product and it's not going anywhere. But that's not what it's about. In the process of writing, you're owning your craft, you are perfecting your skills. So if you can start from a young age and just continue writing, by the time you do get an opportunity and one comes your way, you will be ready. And that's exactly what happened with myself. I've been writing since I was, 11 years old. My comic books, my songs, my stories. And for my company, up until that point when Musicline offered me, the job, do you think you could do this? And at that point, I was prepared and I was ready because of all that experience that I had. So my advice would be, you do just have to write, even if you don't think there is an end goal.
That's really good advice. I think we get so caught up in, where's it going to go? Yeah. What's it for? What's the purpose? And actually, some of the best work I imagine in the world has been created off the back of somebody just wanting to have a moment. I know art is a lot like that. Yeah. Artists like Van Gogh would have drawn something painted something without, the worry of what other people would perceive it as, just because they needed to creatively get it out there. So that's obviously the same with writing. Yeah. I think as well, writing musicals is something that is very, very different to anything else. I think writing a musical, also you have to take into account that there is going to be a song and dance coming up. So you have to sort of have the right tonality within a scene because of the song that's going to be in that moment, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think what's great about The Wrong Way Round is that the songs match the vibe of the scene perfectly. Like there's one scene where the students all meet the new twins, Evan and Evangeline, and the song is Rule This School. So it's the N-Elite, who are the nerds, and then the Eagles, who are like the cool jocks, basically saying we rule this school, and they're both like almost competing with each other. Yeah. But in terms of the scene, it's a beautiful ending to the scene, and it's not the only one. I think for me, The Wrong Way Round hits the nail on the head with Steve's music is perfectly in the same tone as all of the script that leads up to it. That's just my thing that I've loved when I've been reading it.
Thank you.
So how did you find the experience of having that particular structure? Did you find that it was quite difficult? Did you find that actually I really liked it because I knew what was expected of me? How did you feel?
To condense work into a junior musical is something I'd never experienced, as I said previously. So you are realistically having a 30-page script condensed to, a 20-page script with, the songs added. So there could be hours of writing that you've done for it to be chopped out or to be changed or condensed. So you really do have to just let go of your ego and say, this is for the better, even though I know it needs to be in there. So I had to learn that even though you think, or I think it needs to be in there, that's not necessarily true. Lines, characters had to be very cut out. We even cut 2 or 3 characters just to make it suit the script. So I had to learn very quickly that, things have to change, things have to be cut. And that isn't always your decision, even as the co-writer. It's a joint partnership. So as Steve has that experience, if he says that needs to happen, I would take his advice on that.
I think as well, what important thing to just highlight there is that you had to put your ego aside. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people in the creative industry, we carry an ego with us because we believe in our craft so much. Great having that passion, but it's so commendable to you to be able to say, well, I know what I want and I know what I think would work, but I'm going to listen to the people that have done this for such a long time, and I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to go with them. And obviously, I think that being able to step back and relinquish the control must have been quite difficult.
It was difficult, only because it's never been something that I've dealt with before. I've always had full control. So for things to be taken away, which has come from the heart, is very difficult. So I can imagine that people have been through the same process know exactly how I'm feeling.
You've done the musical. It's great. It's doing really, really well. What was your, if you could have said, I've taken this from the experience of that first musical, what do you think you've learnt from it?
Just how to change my writing styles. It's not all about what I know, it's about what I need to know. So, you know, like formatting the script, I didn't know anything about that. It was just, I've always done it the same. And I could have sold or I could have produced my scripts like that for the rest of my life, for me. But when it comes to other people, they have their own way. So I had to learn very quickly that you have to change your work to match different areas. So now, from this moment on, I know exactly how to format a Musicline script. I didn't know that 12 months ago. So that's exactly what I've learned. So if Musicline wanted me to write another musical, you know, and it was with a co-partner, if I had to work with Steve again, it would be, I know this now, so you don't need to teach me as much. Or if I was to do it on my own, I know exactly what to do.
You could knock one together in a couple of months then, couldn't you?
Now I could.
So what does the future look like for musicals in schools, do you think?
We are starting, and Musicline is starting, the foundation for the love of musical theatre, and it's growing rapidly, and you'll see it on social media. Musical theatre is huge. Not necessarily on screen, but on stage, it is growing and will continue to grow.
The world of musicals, in terms of the West End and Broadway, as you've just touched upon, it's very different now. I think it is more accessible. I think musicals all have this message now. They never used to. They just used to be entertaining. And I think now there's bigger messages, and there's more new stuff coming through, which is refreshing. And I still love the old school musicals as well. Do you think that the Musicline musicals are appropriate for musical theatre companies? Would you say that they are, even though they're made for schools?
100% now. I think maybe from Musicline's perspective, it might have been an area that they may not have been comfortable with, and let's just do what we know and stick to in schools. But if you were to take the wrong way around and put it in the West End, I think it could work. Let's say schools or theatre companies wanted to go and watch that performance, it would be age appropriate and they would love it because they can relate to it. You can see Musicline productions being put on at West End, Broadway. I could see it happening.
The next thing that you've got, the next project, is your theatre company are performing the wrong way round, which again must be like a pinch me moment that a published musical for yourself is being performed by students who you've watched grow up. It must be a huge accomplishment. Do you, obviously you're being able to direct that and you're watching the choreography evolve and everything. Is it as you thought it would be?
It will come into fruition and the feeling that I really want to get from it when the final production is on, when I can see it all put together and I can, from the audience perspective or backstage, when I see that happen, that's when I get the butterflies. That's when I go, oh my God, this is exactly why I created it. It's always the final, final product.
When that takes place, it would be great if we could share that as a piece of work, as this is what a school musical could look like done by a theatre company, because they are very different. They are professionally trained by people who have done this, worked in the industry. I think it would be great if we can share that as this is what it could look like with all the lights and smoke, which obviously not all schools can achieve. It's great though that there is the option to do that. There is an option of this is your production notes. You don't need, smoke and lights if you're in a school and Mrs. Smith is having to, direct the musical. But then there is an option to completely go to town with it. So yeah, I think it's great. What is the future for Ben O'Hare? What are you doing at the moment, Ben?
At the moment, I am working on converting one of my screenplays into a US stage play that is being performed by a theatre company in Missouri, US. And then we're hopefully getting that streamed online. So that'll be exciting, just to have one of my screenplays, not even a theatre play, a screenplay, into a stage play. So that's one thing. I I've got another project lined up for the future of Musicline.
Okay.
I can't say too much yet, but I can say it's not a musical.
Ooh.
So that's different for Musicline Musicals.
Could you not give us a little bit of a hint as to what it is? Just a little bit.
So I'm in the process of creating a pantomime.
Pantomime as a style is very, very different to musical theatre, musicals. That the audience engagement, for instance, I think there's a lot there that schools would absolutely enjoy. What's your favourite thing about pantomime?
My favourite thing is how close it is to a musical. You got to understand that it's still got the singing, dancing and acting. However, it's the breaking the fourth wall with the audience. For example, that he's behind you, or oh no, he isn't. Adding those elements into a musical is what creates panto. So my favourite bit is just adding that little tweak, turning a musical into something completely different. And it's just that little thing. But you do have to remember those things to make it a pantomime. You know, someone could say, I've wrote a pantomime. They're engaging with the audience. They're talking to the audience. The actors are. However, if you don't use the traditional he's behind you, or you don't use the traditional, you know, man playing the woman, then you don't really have a pantomime. You've just got a glorified musical. So just those little changes, I would say, yeah.
What's great is pantomime is also all year round. You know, it's something that schools can pick up at any time in the year, which is obviously great for schools because they could do it as an end of term play, or they could do it in Christmas. It doesn't have to be a particular time.
People have this perception that it is a Christmas thing because it's a Christmas tradition. However, you know, watching Jack and the Beanstalk or Cinderella, it's not a Christmas story, but companies tend to put it around Christmas time because it's just a fun family activity to do at Christmas time. But it is all year round. You can watch Cinderella or Jack and the Beanstalk any time of year.
I know that you're not allowed to tell us what pantomime that you're writing, but is it something that you know people will love?
I know 100% they will love it because they're going to be very familiar with it, and it's something that's close to my heart too.
Would it be suitable for schools and theatre companies? Is that the sort of thing that you were hoping for with it?
Absolutely, yeah. Suitable for everybody.
Fantastic. Oh, I like that. That's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm also writing a book at the moment with my sister.
Okay.
And it's based on neurodiversity and neurodivergence. Okay. And we are using forest animals to capture the essence of like an ambient forest. At the moment, we're looking for literary agents. Yeah, and then once we are represented and the book is represented, we can get it out and get it published. Then hopefully we can integrate it into schools then so that it can be taught, you know, maybe in a curriculum, because it's, you know, it's so important that we learn new things in 2024 going forwards.
So you're a busy man, Ben. That's what we've learned from today, is that you are extremely busy. And it sounds to me like you are constantly looking at new opportunities, that you're looking for new things to improve and better yourself. Yeah. You know, I think the work that you've done so far with Musicline is absolutely commendable. I think your future at Musicline looks very, very bright. By the sounds of it, you already have things coming up that you're like, yeah, we can do that, absolutely. The one takeout for me, and I hope anyone who watches, listens to this can also hear, is that you use aliens in order to write.
Yeah, you could say that, the muse of aliens, a higher consciousness.
A higher consciousness.
Yeah, it cannot be explained. I cannot explain it. However, I will say, you know, if you do sit down and you have music playing and you really focus, you can access a higher consciousness somehow. I didn't know I could do it, but I can. But just to end from me as well, you know, being a writer, you don't need to identify in a specific genre, you know, or have a specific style. If you are writing a comic, a musical, a pantomime, a screenplay, stage play, you are a writer, you know that. So if you want to be a writer, you don't need to stick to one area. You can do whatever you want, exactly like I've done. Just write whatever you want, as long as you're having fun. That's the main thing.
If anyone wants to reach out to Ben, what's your social contacts? Because this is an important thing, because there might be people that watch this that are like, I need a writer like Ben O'Hare. What's your contacts?
You can find me on Instagram at Ben O'Hare 92. Or on TikTok, I am Ben O'Hare _writer. Okay. And YouTube is just Ben O'Hare. Mostly on TikTok, because there's a lot of engagement there where I can get back to people who are leaving comments. And Instagram, you can leave me a DM, and I'll get back to you there too.
There you go. So thank you very much for your time today, Ben.
You're welcome.
For me, it's always nice to know the person behind the script or behind the story. And Ben O'Hare is just a name that appears next to Steve Titford on the Wrong Way Round scripts for a lot of schools. But it'd be nice if they could then look into that. And hopefully today we've inspired some children out there that are thinking, I'd love to be able to be a writer, and listening to your story they can see how you got there, and maybe in not the traditional sense, but still absolutely successful. Congratulations, Ben.
Thank you.
Well done, and thank you very much. We are going to be coming back to you with a fourth podcast instalment, and we're going to be meeting, we have some other new writers that we're going to be meeting, and some writers that you will have already known the name of. So yeah, see you soon. Bye. Wave to the camera, Ben.
Bye.